And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm host Benjamin Lee. Join me and my guests on this exclusive interview. Now, Venezuela is in turmoil as mass protests erupt against President Nicolás Maduro's contested re-election. Amidst claims of electoral fraud and violent crackdowns, the opposition leader Maria Corina Machado has emerged to rally supporters despite threats of arrest, highlighting the escalating struggle for democracy in the country. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss these critical developments is Estefania Melendez, former ambassador of the Venezuelan Interim Government to Bulgaria and the Western Balkans. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
So, right out the gate, with the Electoral Commission essentially being controlled by Maduro's allies, can we trust the official results claiming his victory with about 51 to 52% of the votes?
Yeah, the Electoral Council in Venezuela is supposed to be an independent institution, but actually it's not. It's just responding to Maduro, and as we expect, they will show a result in favor of Nicolás Maduro. But in Venezuela, we have electoral laws. So the Electoral Council should, based on this law, to show the results and to show the reports direct from the machine, so the result that they announce can be auditable, can be the eyes of the world. And this is something that they have. They don't do it. They refuse to do it. They just announce this result. But in the opposition, we actually organize very well because we know in advance they will try to do this. And we had observers, legitimate observers that were credited by this electoral council. And we could get the reports directly from the machine that we have made public. And it shows what we just claimed. Edmundo Gonzalez has won the election by 67%, and Maduro took 30% of the votes, very different of what they said, and they are unable to demonstrate the opposite.
Right, so transparency is indeed at the essence here. And like you mentioned, with electoral watchers and people who are accredited to audit these results, we see actually a win for the opposition. But in the meantime, we see these protests on the screen, and President Maduro has threatened maximum punishment for protesters. How do you see this affecting the already tense situation on the ground?
Well, very important what is going on right now on the ground in Venezuela, because we have seen a repression as practically as never before. It has escalated very much, even applying some techniques that we haven't seen. They go to the house of the people, they check their funds, and even for a WhatsApp status or a video that was sent, they take you and put you in jail. Maduro just recently announced that he will open 2 jails of maximum security and for these protesters, and even using a very conservative term because he said it will be a re-education centers. As we know the history, we know what that means. I mean, in Venezuela, we have torture centers. There is actually an ongoing formal investigation from the International Crime Court to investigate crimes against humanity, and this is most likely going to increase. But the people is very decisive. They continue to be on the street, and it is very important to highlight that these protesters are pacific. All the violence comes from the regime that doesn't want to accept the will of the Venezuelan people.
Right, so do you think this threat of violent crackdown is going to deter some people who are afraid for their lives, or do you think that it will actually add fuel to the fire that is already brewing and, have further pushback from the people against this regime?
Well, as you can imagine, this is a very complex situation right now when you see what is going on. But I have seen that the people, many of the people has lost the fear because they understand what is at stake, is their future, what is compromised, and the people is quite decisive on recover democracy. So we have seen how people is reacting now very different as before, as before used to be. And well, we need also that the international community pay attention of what's going on and push the regime to don't do this, because this is against human rights. And what is important for us is that the world can watch what is going on right now in Venezuela. The people will continue going to the street. It's a pacific protest, and the decision of the people should be respected.
All right, and speaking of the situation being complicated, there's even reports that indicates that Russians have been meddling in these elections, especially the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has made a post on X stating that there is indeed Russian meddling in these elections. How credible do you think these accusations are? And if that is the case, what is at stake, and why does Russia feel incentivized to meddle in the election?
Yeah, we actually, thanks to President Zelensky, to highlight this, because it's not something that normally people talk about in the international media. But well, about Wagner to be on the ground in Venezuela, this is something that we have information about it for plenty years ago. Um, and you need to understand something. When you watch to the results that Maduro got in the election, we're talking about 30%. You understand also that people that supposed to support him, even in the armed force, in the security force, in their party, actually vote against him. So you can understand that Maduro doesn't really trust his environment. And that is why he has to look for others to protect him. And this is something that Russia has been provided to Maduro. And it's very well known that Russia has sent before in 2019 some securities from Wagner actually to protect the first ring of security of Maduro. But it's not only about this. I mean, we need to also understand that there is a huge military cooperation with Russia, with Russian Federation, not only with Wagner Group, but even 1 month before the election, the general prosecutor of Venezuela went to Moscow, as one of the general prosecutor of Russia went to Caracas. All this happened in the 2 months before the election. So everything is quite understandable that Russia has a huge interest for Maduro to stay in power. And of course, there is a huge cooperation for this to happen. And this is something that the free world should take into the account. Russia is inside the Venezuela. It has a lot of influence on the regime, and they have their hands there trying to avoid a democratic change.
Right now, this situation is very alarming. We're looking at a government that is essentially, well, not voted in, or at least not in a very legitimate process. And here's a relatively hard thing to think about it, but I'm just wondering if peaceful and democratic procedure can still be a viable solution in Venezuela, given the current government stance.
Well, right now there is an ongoing effort from the governments of Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico to try to get a negotiation. I mean, they call it the silent diplomacy that they are applying to, because 7 countries of the region, they express that Nicolás Maduro is illegitimate, that is obviously he didn't win the elections. And the answer from Nicolás Maduro was to break diplomatic relations with these 7 countries. So the approach that these 3 countries, Brazil, Colombia, and Mexico, are trying to do, it is trying to get a negotiation. They even abstain in that resolution what tried to be approved in the Organization of the American State. So they're trying to build like a bridge to the Maduro regime and trying to set the base to get a negotiation. do not know if it's going to work, but of course, we hope that this can be a step to move forward.
Right. I think it is in everyone's interest to see things going forward in a more democratic kind of way. But are there worries that things might escalate and get out of hand if Maduro's claim to power is so strong that he decides not to have these negotiations, not to pursue a democratic kind of way of life, and not engage in negotiations with these international partners?
Well, of course, this can happen. The Maduro regime is very good on, work with time. He will leave the time past to see if we forget about this. Well, the people is very well deceived. That needs to change. But on the other hand, I believe that the international community, the free country, should have another plan, and they have to review if the sanctions against the regime can be put back, as United States just relieved the sanctions. So I think this policy should be reviewed, and even with more consequence, because as everybody see, they are trying to steal this election, steal the will of the Venezuelan people, and Maduro cannot just go like nothing happened. So we saw that yesterday the European Union, the Council, have issued a statement where they also push the regime to show the numbers, to show the data, and this data to be auditable by international organizations that can say whether it's true or not, and also to review the data from the opposition. So what we want is show the numbers, and numbers that everybody can review, and for the world to be without any doubt that the winner of this election is Edmundo Gonzalez and not Nicolás Maduro.
Right. Like you mentioned, transparency is going to be key going forward. And of course, it will be also up for the international community to effectively support Venezuela in achieving this transparency and fair electoral process amid this chaotic circumstances. Thank you so much for your input and insight and helping us further break down this situation. Thanks for being with us on TVP World. Appreciate it.
Thanks to you.
And with that, we conclude this edition of our interview. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.